it gives me great pleasure to welcome you for the India launch of Meena Kandasamy's debut novel, The Gypsy Goddess. We are truly honored that she has decided to choose the International Center, Goa International Center, for doing this very prestigious release. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Meena and of course HarperCollins and the Goa Writers Group for organizing and getting her here and the whole thing. Thank you very much. And this is the curtain raiser for our Goa Art and Literary Festival, which, as you all are aware, we are having from the 4th to the 8th of December. And this is our fifth anniversary of this festival, and I hope to see all of you here with your families, friends, children, everybody. Please make it, just note it down in your diary, and I hope to see all of you here in those 4 days. And I would, of course, thank Norma Alvarez for taking time out on a Sunday evening to be here with us. Thank you, Norma. I'd like to invite Vivek now.
Thank you, Nandini. I think for a second, I think we should actually thank Nandini very much with a round of applause for the support given to the Goa Art and Literary scene. I think you can recall just a few years ago, even if you were, Ms. Kuto here can attest to it, even if you were in Goa and wrote a book, you went to Bombay or to Delhi or to Bangalore or abroad to release it, because there simply wasn't a kind of a critical mass of readers of a critical culture here which merited release in Goa. But over the course of the last 5 years, one big reason, there are a number of other factors of course, other institutions, but over the course of the last 5 years, in partnership with the Goa Writers Group, something quite special has been developed here in Goa. And just earlier, yesterday, I was recalling a number of books with national and international significance. A huge number of India debuts have been made here at the International Center, either as part of the Goa Art and Literary Festival or as a curtain raiser like this. In the last 2-3 years alone, we've had award-winning books by Ranjit Hoskote, Jerry Pinto, Naresh Fernandez. Last year, Teju Cole made his India debut here. Last year, we had Gayatri Bahadur. But all of that brings us to today's really very special event, and our deep gratitude here goes to Meena for displaying terrific loyalty to our little organization. And where you have a lot of fans here, and Meena has been one of the stars of the last two Goa Art and Literature festivals with 2 sensational public readings. So nothing could be more fitting, more suited, and more well received really than the launch of this wonderful book here in Goa. There'll be a lot more about the book as we go forward, but first I'd like to talk a little bit about the lady who's going to be releasing it. Nothing could be more suited again. We're in Goa, we're very lucky to have this kind of a melding of similar attitudes and values. Norma Alvarez is no stranger to any of you. She's the moving force, along with her husband, behind the Goa Foundation, which has done much of the great, tireless, often thankless work in preserving what is good and great about Goa. She is a mother. She is also an advocate of the Bombay High Court and an activist and a campaigner on social and environmental issues of public concern. She has taken up a whole series of important public interest litigations, chiefly pertaining to the protection of environment, women's rights issues, human rights, and animal welfare. She was, as you all know, Norma Alvarez was awarded the Padma Shri in 2002 for work in environment and animal welfare, and she was awarded the Yashadamini Puraskar in 2003 by the government of Goa for her work for women's empowerment. Ms. Alvarez, please, if you wouldn't mind joining us here on stage. Meena Kandasamy also, I know most of you have been here to Repeated Literature Festival, so she will not be unknown to all of you because she's had 2 of the most sensational readings that we've ever had. One at over here on the lawns in the presence of the governor, and one most memorably in Azad Maidan, where all the buildings from around still bear the scorch marks of Meena's reading. And made many lifelong fans, including, I must say, in the entire male staff of the International Center, who very keenly anticipates this launch. So Meena Kandasamy is a poet, fiction writer, translator and activist based in Chennai and partly in England. She has published 2 collections of poetry, Touch and Miss Militancy. I happen to have my copy of Miss Militancy here. So if anyone would like to see it, you're more than welcome. She holds a PhD in social linguistics from Anna University, Chennai. Has represented India at the University of Iowa's very prestigious international writing program, and was made the Charles Wallace India Trust Fellow at the University of Kent, Canterbury. The Gypsy Goddess has been released to tremendous acclaim all over the UK press and now in the Indian press. We're very pleased to host the launch here in Goa. Meena, please join us on stage. There isn't really a form that I'm terribly familiar with book launches, but perhaps we can start with actually launching the book, and then Ms. Alvarez can say a few words about it, if that's okay. The official release of Gypsy Goddess.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I normally don't take a function on Sunday evenings because it's the one day I get at home to try and prepare for the next week, find clothes, iron things and so on. And Sunday evening is the last day that I want to go out. But when Vivek requested me to come to release this book, I came chiefly because the writer, as he told me, is an activist, and any social activist needs to be backed. And so I thought that someone who is down my street as well, writing a novel about a subject which is to do with social issues and powerful social issues, I should not turn down the offer. And I accepted, and I'm glad I came today. I read the book over the last few days. I got it about 2 days ago. And very frankly, I'm really hesitant to recommend the book to the audience. Not because the writing is not good. Far from it. Meena is a powerful writer, very good command of the language. She has ample wit, sarcasm. Her description of events, people, situations is extraordinary. So why am I hesitant? I'm hesitant because the book is very disturbing. I wanted to put the book down several times because, and Meena, I'm sorry that you think I offend you, but I really don't. Because it is so powerful, it has so much graphic reality in it that you sometimes don't want to know. You are comfortable not knowing. But I went on, I read the book till the very end. And in a certain sense, you despair at the end. Not at the very end, but towards the end. And you wonder, when will the situation change in this country? 60 years into independence. When will people who are marginalized, poor, not empowered, people who live in rural areas far from the metropolis, from highways, from food malls and other malls, from hospitals, from women's rights groups, from newspaper establishments, from the judiciary, when will they have that empowerment, even basic empowerment, that some of us have begun to take as our right naturally and we're used to? What Meena writes is purported to be a novel, but the novel is only a veneer. It is an event, and a gruesome event, which is told in a fiction form. Perhaps some of the names are changed, perhaps the author has taken liberties with places and a few dates perhaps. But in the end, it is a story of a terrible massacre which took place some decades ago on a Christmas day, no relation to Christmas, but it was the 25th of December 1968. It's something that some of us of the earlier generation might remember, when an entire village was almost wiped away, and number of people in that village of Kilvemani, Nagapatinam Taluka, was simply hacked away, burnt, all of them agricultural labours, by the Paddy Growers Association, Paddy Producers Association. The novel is a story, not of that one night only, but the novel is a story of what led to it and the aftermath of it. And very briefly, the story is about agricultural labourers who got organized in some fashion, or who at least were attracted to communism because of what they could negotiate from the Paddy Producers Association, the land owning class. And what were they trying to negotiate? What did they get for some of their negotiations? Half a measure of paddy extra at harvest time, hours of work regulated from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. instead of sunrise to sunset, which meant sunrise is any time and sunset is any time. They were trying to fix a time. And a holiday to perform certain rituals, some small things. And then you have the powerful upper class, Gopal Krishna Naidu, a powerful man who threatens, cajoles, wants them to bow down, wants them to work as they have always worked before, who encourages the Paddy Producers Association not to give in, because he says if you give in to small things, they will start asking for more and more, and it will never end, so hold your fort. He even ridicules the Paddy Producers Association when they want to consider some demands. He tells them, you've got to be strong, you've got to stay away. He uses threat, force, and so on. People somehow still want to, they have some belief that some things are due to them. They stick on to the red flag. He taunts the villages. How is that there is all red cloth in your village? And so on and so on. And when he doesn't get his way, he organizes this terrible massacre, where in that one night, the entire village was to be totally eliminated. Not just to punish them, but as a lesson to everybody else around. Large number of people get into one house, and the lady says, stay here, you will be protected. That house is set fire to. One of the women throws out her one-year-old son. The people who have set the fire, the people who are committing the crime, hack the body to pieces and throw it back in again. They lock the door, and everybody there screaming is burnt. This is terrible enough. Perhaps we can visualize this. Perhaps we can imagine scenes like this because we see this. But what happens afterwards is even more gruesome. The few villagers who manage to escape come back. They try to search for their dead, and they are arrested by the police, because the police accuse them of murdering the others. The police say you were responsible, how come you are not dead already? One of the villagers says that he managed to get to the scene. They're crowded with police and politicians and so on. And he is arrested, taken to a police station. In a very graphic way, he says, I was arrested, I was treated as a prisoner, I was condemned when I had lost everything that night. And here were people who had everything and they were going without any punishment. The issue moves on to an inquiry. And the inquiry says, at the end of asking questions this way and that way, the inquiry holds that the village people were responsible for the massacre that occurred that night because they refused to see reason, they refused to see what was good for them and in what way they could harmoniously go on with the Paddy Owners Association in a synopsis fashion. But the most shocking thing was that it went up to the High Court. And at the High Court, the court found a way to exonerate all the 23 accused persons, saying that we find the villagers' testimony not corroborating with each other, falsehood, untrue, not in agreement. We find it difficult to believe that the landowners, the 23 persons, they were rich persons, they had land, they had money. It is not possible for us to imagine that people with wealth and standing would themselves go into a village and set fire to the houses, burn the people, beat the people, kill the people. Perhaps others, some servants of theirs, did it. And while we hold these 23 persons responsible for the incident, we are not able to relate it. We are not able to relate their actual movements to the killing of the persons. Obviously, the villager who's her storyteller says, we couldn't bring the witnesses, they were all dead. All the people who were killed were dead, so we could only say it. And the High Court says that we are not able to relate. We find that they are responsible, but we cannot impose any sentence on them, and all were acquitted. A massacre of an entire village, and all are acquitted. And the person says there, before that the court of course says, what we are happy to note or pleased to note is that although it's unfortunate that 45 persons were burned to death, it is consolation for us to know that this was not premeditated. The villager at the end of that chapter says, we said to them, we do not want your compensation and we do not want your justice. The book doesn't end there, and I don't want to tell you the end because that would not be fair. But why should a massacre which took place in 1968 interest us today? What is the significance, or is there any significance? I was thinking about it. Is there any day, any week, when you read the newspapers, when you do not read of a massacre of the upper class hacking to death 1, 2, 10, 20, many people in another part of India? Does 1 week go by when there is no incident of brutality reported in India? We're talking, as I said, of rural India, the places which are far from the metropolises, where immediately the next day you get into the news. Some of the crimes that are committed by landowners against the landless, Muzaffarnagar is an example, many others would come to mind. Some of these make the headlines, they do, but for a day or two. After that, we forget about them. We commiserate. We are unhappy when we read. We do not think this should happen. That maybe education, rural development schemes, various things that the government has will trickle down and the situation will get better. But we don't know what to do about it, and life moves on. But this is the reality of India even 60 years after independence. And that is why it is important to know the real truth behind what happens. Because in newspapers you get a condensed story. You get something happened in so-and-so place, so many people killed, so many houses burned, so much of land lost. It's a story that we can take. But this, as it is told, is hard to take. And that is why I said I hesitate to recommend. Because it hits you in the gut. She writes powerfully. She writes with intense emotion, passion about this event. And as she says somewhere in the book, her job is to tell the story. Whether we read it or not is up to us. Whether we want to know the reality of what happens in India is up to us. Recently we had the Kandasamy case, which I think you will all recall. It's quite recent. 2 young cousins raped, murdered, hung from a tree. I had the occasion to speak to a politician from Delhi. I don't have many politician friends, but there is one person I knew in the central government. And I was speaking to the person about this incident. And she said to me, she said, you know, it's nothing unusual. And I said, what? It's not unusual that 2 young persons were hung in a tree and raped. But she says, you know, in UP, the only good business that people have is kidnapping. I said, kidnapping, is that a business? And she said, yes. The thing is, she says, that there, the agricultural fields, people also are given licenses to grow opium. And they grow opium and they are supposed to produce a certain quantum, but everybody produces more than that. And of course it goes into the black market and then you make money out of it. And so it becomes profitable to kidnap, then get in cahoots with the police, then demand the ransom, then the ransom is paid, then the girl is returned. And I said, but what about the girl? She said, yeah, of course they are raped. Nobody's going to keep a girl like that. And then I thought she was exaggerating, but I read the other day in the newspaper, the father of one of the girls who was killed, and he said, if our daughters had been returned, we also would not perhaps have made a complaint. This is not a callous father, but this is somebody who's accepting the reality of the situation. Where young girls and young women are raped, a mother goes to the police station to complain and she is threatened with rape or rape. I don't know what exactly happened. But this is the fate of people. And the father says, if my daughters had come back, I would not even have complained because it's happening all around us. This is the story that Meena is writing about. It is something that we should read. It's not a bedtime tale. It's not something that you can take lightly. But it is a book that we need to know about what happens to our brothers and sisters in parts of the world which we may not, in parts of our country which we may never have reached and we may never want to live in also. But this is the reality of rural India. Thank you, Meena, for your novel, and I hope you will buy the book because she deserves acclaim and she deserves our appreciation for taking the trouble to write down a terrible story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Norma. That was, I think that's actually the best endorsement you could have for the book, despite the way she couched it, because you can see that Norma was completely gripped and engaged with the book. And she brings up a very important point, which is about the hidden history that I know we have several people from Tamil Nadu in the audience, and none of them had ever heard of this incident. And it's one of the greatest such, in terms of numbers, it's one of the most important such incidents in Indian history. But kind of to begin, I thought there's another aspect to the book, due to the fact that you're a poet, Meena, there's a very clever, wry, often flat out hilarious, and very playful meta-narrative to the book, and there's a lot of humor throughout it. In this brief conversation, I'll ask a few questions and Meena will do a few readings, and we'll turn it over to the audience. I thought perhaps we could start with maybe a reading so we can hear in your own voice one of those aspects, that brings out your playfulness with the language, the humor in your approach, if that's okay.
This is how the book actually begins. It's difficult to write a novel living in a land where despotic bards ensured that for more than 1,000 years, literature existed only in the form of poetry. Alliteration under the armpit, algebra around the rhyming feet. Meter was all that mattered. But every language put forth its own share of bacons and bunions and so on. Tamil prose was born. A child actor made an odd public appearance here and there, every now and then, but the absence of reality TV in those times made a recluse of this little rebel who soon refused to speak or sing and instead opted for solitary confinement. Years later, the first signs of a mustache and breast began to show, hair sprouted in downward spirals, and prose attained puberty without much fanfare. Riddled with teenage angst and burdened with an androgynous voice, it did not take long for this youngster to realize that poetry could never be replaced. Emerging from a bat-ridden library, the self-sentenced one broke into the system deviously under the pretext of praise. Copious critical notes on the works of the aforereferred tyrannical poets came to be written, and what's worse, read. Poetry was the multiversal megastar. Prose began its humble career as a dubious philological commentator. Betrayal and backstabbing belonged to another day, close at hand but hidden away. Centuries later, deconstructionists would study this phenomena and tweak their findings. Poetry, fucked up by flattery and falsehood. Prose, proved talk is not cheap, turned purple, never got rid of its inclination to comment. Back to this novel, Tamil in taste, English on the tongue, free of all poetry and prosody, dished out in dandy prose. Forgive this text its nagging tendency to try and explain, its disposition to tag its opinion at every turn of phrase. Please understand that staying verbose is a part of the process of prose. And also, please kindly understand that such underselling is clear evidence of my commitment to a supreme mission of self-sabotage. Now allow me an auspicious start. Amen and Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and so on and so forth. And 6 times for the sacred sake of my mother's sexed tongue, Murga, 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 Murga.
Thank you. I guess the first question that one has to ask, you say here, poetry could never be replaced, not just in the Tamil tradition, but you are known for your poetry. How did the novel come about? Why the novel? Why this form?
The thing is that, I don't think I'm the most suited person to write a novel, or that I'm like dying to write a novel or something, because it's really tremendous amount of work, and like at least for writing about 1968 when I'm not from there or not really lived a very rural life, it's just quite difficult. But I think with poetry, people can see your anger, people can, like, yeah, you're writing angry verse. People think, yeah, she's a political poet, but very often, even if they can theoretically feel what's the problem or why you're so worried about, let's say, caste or gender, they just miss the story, because like with Kilman money, for instance, it's something that didn't happen very long ago. It's only 45 years ago. But do you hear about it in school? Is it ever spoken about in common discourse? I think it's possibly the biggest caste massacre that took place in independence India immediately after like a couple of years after independence. But I think the kind of erasure, the fact that it just doesn't even exist, makes you want to say, no, I want to tell a story. I want to tell a story of why I'm so obsessed by caste system, or why I'm so distrustful of the judiciary, and like there's so many things that worry about, and then you think that you have to actually use this kind of form and tell this kind of story.
Having read your poetry and a lot of your journalism and activist writing, it's really got quite a unique kind of blend. You brought it all together in this novel. One of the things I found more interesting, again I'm talking about the form here, is that a good part of the book actually is again very playful, meta-narrative kind of about discussing how you might write this book, why you can't write the book this way, why this technique doesn't work, why that technique, as I think is written somewhere, a part of the novel is about the impossibility of writing such a novel. Is that, was that part of your idea in the first place? Did you start to think I will write it in a more linear fashion and then come to this, or why that approach?
No, I think the reason why it happens like that, Vivek, is because everybody would think, the first chapter is a very clever construction, but actually it's not clever, because I would start the novel on many days, and even though I've never been to a kind of creative writing workshop or anything where I learned something. The thing is that there's this whole idea of, okay, so who is your protagonist? So what's the point of view? Is it a first person narration? Is it a third person omniscient narrator? So, these are things that people, you want to box, and you also believe that, when you read a lot of literature, you also start to believe that that's exactly what you should do. So you're looking at this village, you're scanning for one person, you want to choose somebody, okay, I want to choose Muni, who lost like 11 of his relatives. And you want to tell the story through his eyes, but then it becomes difficult because, through one person's eyes, there's only so much that you can say, but what's happening here is something much more larger. So all of this was like, the kind of failed attempts of what the whole writing process was about. And for instance, I made fun of this once upon a time, in a tiny village, there lived this old woman. So yeah, you try to choose this old woman and, make her the protagonist, but it just doesn't work because what is she going to, how is she going to be involved? And especially even if I want a very strong female lead character, it's just that she wouldn't be directly facing the legal system. She wouldn't be the person going to the court, because you're talking about, unlettered people. We're talking about Tamil Nadu, and we're also talking about the whole oppression of tradition. So yeah, you do, think there are many heroines, but how do you still manage to, tell the story without making one single person as the heroine or whatever? So it's a lot of tension that, yeah, I think I wrote the first chapter last, in a way, yeah.
Well, it's actually quite a beautiful chapter, I think, in the way that you set out your conundrums. Well, since you mentioned the story itself, would you mind, I learned from other people who are from Tamil Nadu, that they have not heard of the story. How did you choose this story? Have you always known about it? I mean, for instance, did you always know about it?
No. The thing is, I did know about one story that my dad would always tell me about how one landlord was punished, but I'm not going to give away the actual punishment.
Quite a story.
Yeah, it's quite a story, and it's something that he would repeatedly say. And the thing is, but when I started to learn about it was when I was myself working with translations of writing, and you come across, I think, especially in terms of resistance, memory is very resilient, and people are all the time bringing out all these places, the massacre in Vidupuram, the massacre in Kilvanmani, the riots in Bodhi. So you have in people's mind, and especially in the mind of the Dalit people or the working class oppressed landless people, there are all these pointers in their mind of various, so they have a map, just like we might have a tourist map, places to see, or something like that. So they have a map of where they have paid with their blood, and Kilvanmani was always the starting point. So, and it's also, I think, often in Tamil songs as well as in protest poetry, there are places like Kulapati where, small children were electrocuted to death because they took water from a landlord's pond, from a well, so, somebody put electricity just to kill them because they were untouchable and they're not supposed to take water. So, these are things that are in public memory, and I think Venmani was very much in public memory, so you had to, but not for everybody, of course, not for the upper middle class, not for the middle class, not for those who were denying that caste existed, but for the other people, I think it was very evocative story.
Jumping around a little bit, my questions were, leading up from this, I mean, you talked about it being a long time ago, and Norma mentioned how many of these issues are still with us. I'm curious to know about your viewpoint. Your novel kind of sets out, in the way that it approaches it, it sets out conflicting parties, right? One is the Paddy Producers Association, and one is the Communist Party.
Yeah.
And in many ways, the people in between are victims of both.
Yeah.
Is that a situation you still recognize very much in India?
No, I don't think people are victims of communism. I would strongly disagree with that. But what I would say, when she says that it keeps happening, is that with Kandasamy, I mean, I wouldn't say that if justice happened in Kandasamy, this would just stop, because these are not going to stop unless we change people's conscience and, have a major social radical movement in place. But I think that the denial of justice that took place in Kandasamy happens like it happened in Lakshman Purpate, 96, Batani Chola 97, and then now Sindur massacre. I mean, the court, those were cases of the Patna High Court, and now in Chulur it's the Andhra Pradesh High Court. So all the accused who really belong to the feudal landowning, caste Hindu or backward caste groups are, allowed to just walk free. And I think that somehow the impunity that they enjoy, the total immunity from the legal system, makes them, get away with everything. They just don't have to worry. They know that over a point of time they can bribe or, manipulate the judiciary, and it's a big failing, because that's the kind of failing that makes you lose your faith in the entire system, Just as, well, we can hate caste, of course we do, but we shouldn't be forced into hating the Indian judiciary, because it's not a part of the caste system. It's not like the caste system created the judiciary, but then why does the judiciary support it? Why do the police support it? And it's for young people, especially when they're very confused about, do we believe in this country at all? Do we believe in democracy? These are things that break your heart, and you just don't want the police to be like that. You don't want the judges to be like that.
I think at some point we must have a reading which focuses on the politics. But I just want to ask you one more question about the language.
Yeah.
There's one word that kept coming to my mind, is that there's a lot of cheekiness, right, in the way that you've written this. There's a lot of irreverence. In a way, you're kind of, deflating the reader as well as the subject as you go about it, despite the fact that these are incredibly important and very painful things to write about. Is that a conscious thing that you did, or is it just your natural approach to lighten?
No, I see. There are two aspects. One is that the humor or the sarcasm, whatever it is, that helped. I don't even know if I can give it labels, but it sort of helped me survive, mentally, to be able to tell the story. And it's not something that comes from me or in any way within me, but it's something that comes from the people. This whole irreverence, this whole coarseness, and this whole, they would just say, they would not give a damn to what they're going through, and they would criticize the oppressor in the most rawest and abusive manner possible, and the most creative manner, if I may say so, possible, because that's exactly how they came to terms with the injustices they played in their own lives. So for me, it was very important that I capture that spirit as well, because on one hand it's the most depressing story, but on the other hand it's also about how these people have hit back, and how they're strong enough to have found their own sense of closure to the story. So I would look at Kandasamy as a very successful story in the end, and with people who were very powerful and still making peace in their own way.
Well, it resulted in this novel, among other things. Would you mind doing another reading, and then we will take some questions, and I have many other questions,
Oh, sure,
but we'll take some questions about it. Maybe something towards
Is it my phone?
towards the end. No, your phone's right.
Your, from the end?
Or middle.
Part of the way in which I wrote this was, like imagining dialogue, for instance, because everybody, like if you're going to start, start writing, the whole thing is, dialogue is so crucial, dialogue is responsible for action, dialogue makes the story move. But then you look at this and you realize how are you going to recreate dialogue, which is basically not spoken in English, which is the language of your novel, which is from another time and place. There's a certain register in place, because these were very oppressed people. They're not going to, how do you even, put the fear and the respect and the terror that, is inherent in Tamil, or, let's say even the militancy into English. So this is a section that deals about it. Any sociologist and other board academics who may scour my novel for information about the sexual alcoholic and deviant indulgences of my protagonist will be sorely disappointed. I'm telling a story so that a story gets told, not with the intention that somebody somewhere is going to be awarded a PhD for studying the postmodern perversions of this novel. If you want to learn who was boozing that morning, who were the two lovers who stayed away from the village meeting for a secret rendezvous, or which was the one family that had switched its loyalty to Gopalakrishna Naidu, you won't find that information here. Okay, curiosity is inevitable, and I can understand why you would want to at least know some of the things said at the village meeting. Of course, you're aware of the fact that I was not there, so to make up these dialogues, speeches, soliloquies on demand causes great discomfort to me as a writer. Here are 3 snippets. Go ahead, paste your smiley faces on them. Dialogue 1. Srinivasan, angered by his brother Subramanian being the go-between, threatened to stop talking to him if he kept pleading the case of the landlords. He is also said to have called Subramanian a Thoda Nadangi, a Tamil insult that signaled way more derision than its literal translation, a man with twitching thighs. Dialogue 2. Bait does not become food, Kandasamy said. And in order to dangle a convincing explanation for his aphorism, he pointed out that everyone in the village should have witnessed firsthand the fate of the hungry fish who seeks to eat an easy worm. This fishy symbolism was not immediately understood because the people who were fighting for increased wages and more paddy were in no mood to listen to a man who was pontificating about a mysterious fish that should hunt for food and not be beguiled by an offered feast. What is being offered to us by the landlords? Like the loans they grant us during marriages, like the Arab money they give us once a week, like the promise to provide us jobs when we join the association, these are baits. None of these will change our life. None of these will give us rights. None of this will make us own the land we till. None of these will make us their equals. None of these will make them treat us with respect. They're not waiting to become our brothers. They're using every opportunity to lure us into their fold. We should remain clever, he said, and returning to his metaphor added, and not bite the bait. Then he underlined the importance of sticking with the communists because they were fighting for the rights of the workers and the tillers and the toilers. He also reminded the others that the Agricultural Labourers Trade Union was 15 years old, but the Paddy Producers Association, an overnight mushroom, was only 3 years old. He believed this 15-year-old fledgling movement would fight and uproot centuries of caste and feudalism. Oppression must be met with transgression, he said. So he asked the people of Kandasamy to be brave. He also said transgression will be met with more oppression, and so he asked the people of Kandasamy to be more brave. Dialogue 3. Karupaya swore that his pubic hair will not be plucked either by the elder sister fucking Gopalakrishna Naidu or the elder sister fucking God who created that elder sister fucker. The others might have nodded in vehement agreement, reaffirming their firm belief either in the tensile strength of his pubic hair or in the epilatory ineptitude of Gopalakrishna Naidu and his maker.
You know, as an ancient activist and being familiar with Tamil Nadu at that time, you know, the left movement was very strong at that point of time.
The communists, yeah.
Yeah, there were leaders like Chintan, Maithili, Ram and all that.
Yeah.
But
Maithili and Ram were very young, they were in the 20s at the time, yeah.
Chintan, there was a guy called Chintan was Australian, you know, the CPM had...
No, the CPM is acknowledged in the book, yeah.
Yeah, but what was there, you know, in the course of the research, were they intervening actively in these issues? What was the role that the left played?
I think the left played a tremendous role in this. The sad fact is the emergence of identity politics, the emergence of this self-respect movement, even though, you know, people would say the Dravidian movement was great, is that in a certain manner it eclipsed the reforms the left was trying to make on the ground, you know, in terms of, organizing, in terms of fighting untouchability. And so I think the Marxist Party, especially in Tanjore district where I'm from, or at least my father is from.
You mean Ramaswamy Naicker and gang managed to erode the hold of the left?
Yes, I think so, in a big manner. And for me, it's very problematic because, at least the DMK as it stands now is a extremely, family unit. But if we look very closely, is that the self-respect movement itself was funded by feudalists and they were not doing anything to challenge landowning patterns. So, while of course it was right that Brahmin domination had to be challenged, there can be no two opinions on that. But, you should always go further and challenge other oppressive systems. And feudalism was one of the worst systems that was existent at that time because, people were owning like 5,000 acres, 10,000 acres of land and, you had to challenge it. And sometimes, like, this novel talks about how Gopalakrishnan Naidu manages to meet Periyar, like E.V. Ramasamy, and that is very shocking for the people, because how can a man meet a guy who is, involved in the massacre like that? And what does it tell about him as a leader? And these are the questions. And how does Karunanidhi handle this? Because Karunanidhi, for whatever he might claim to be, naming his son Stalin and all that, was the man who said communism will be crushed with an iron fist. And this was his response to Tamil Nadu. So yeah, at times I regret that, we didn't grow up with much more class consciousness, and, we were just fighting caste without also linking it to the larger questions of land and, land ownership.
What is curious is, around the same period, there were similar movements in Cheragaon, in Maharashtra, there were other incidents in Madhya Pradesh and all that, which tended to move towards far more, healthy solutions. There was more, received far more publicity, far more this one. Whereas incidents in Tamil Nadu somehow didn't catch the national consciousness as much as, elsewhere.
I don't know what to say. I mean, like 100,000 Tamil people die and you don't even read that in the newspaper. So I don't want to even start about that.
Norma talked about this book and she said about some of the events we're comfortable not knowing, right? As a kind of a final question from me, your book does seem to be a corrective to the kind of hegemonic history that's being rammed down people's throats. My children's history books certainly reek of it. Was that part of your? Did you take that as a part of your mission in this book? Do you consider that part of your own life, kind of the message that you want to get across? Is that to have a more nuanced, complex reading of history?
I think, Kilvinman is not something I've ever encountered in my textbook either, so it's very true. But would I say that I'm in the process of writing history? I don't think so, because, even if the novel is in many senses a historical novel, even if I've not changed names or introduced new characters, or anything with the dates, everything is very true. I don't think as a writer, I think it becomes quite dangerous for me to say this is corrective history, even if maybe there is a sense of trying to say the story. All I'm trying to say is that for me the story was, not in terms of, grand storytelling or anything. For me the basic story is about my father, who was, an orphan in Tanjore, growing up there, coming to Chennai. He was for some time an RSS pracharak, among other things, and trying to fashion a life here. So why did he have to run away? And his own childhood stories of hunger, singing all these devotional songs in a temple so that the people who come there would feed him or give him some money with which he could buy lunch. And I think it's extremely inclusive, because this is somebody you respect, this is somebody who puts food on your table, but to know that this kind of food had this kind of emotive issue. I don't think he spoke about any kind of cruelty as much as the cruelty of finding his next meal. And for me that was that's something all of us take for granted, isn't it? So for living with this person who you idolize and who is possibly one of the greatest figures that you personally know, to know what he's been through and come out of. And it's so disturbing. And I've been to my native village where our house is, my father's house just close to the graveyard, and the absolute poverty. And for me, the thing is that I could have told my own story, but I think in a climate like Tanjore, where all this is happening, is that there are thousands of more stories of horror. And then when you finish telling this, you at least can make peace with yourself. Why did this man run away? Why did he come to Chennai? Because Chennai is not the most hospitable place, but still, you had, you don't have any roots here, you don't know too many people, but still, you can make peace with the fact that why your family did what it had to do, and where exactly you are from, and what people were running away from. And I think that's one of the more pushing reasons to tell the story, to be able to know why the people living that place.
That's very compelling. If you could do one more reading, but let's take some questions in between.
I just wanted to ask you, if you think this corporate cronyism and this new dimension that's coming up, is it going to make life a little more difficult for social activists?
No, I think it's true as well because, the targeting of left activists, for instance, or activists who are protesting against, like, let's say, the dam projects, or activists who are protesting against POSCO and Vedanta, of course, are on the receiving end.
And the War Foundation with
The
which...
War Foundation, yeah. So, anybody who opposes mining or development with a capital D are going to liable to be, criminalized in all ways possible. So, and I don't think it's you don't even have to actually think of a big dam or like big MNC. In Chennai there's this slum in Ashok Nagar that's been burnt at least 8 times over the last 5 years, and the reason the entire slum area is being set on fire is because one corporate company wants to clear up that area so that they can have their they can extend their office. And so this is something they do. So, and nobody, would say anything. They would just say, "Oh, this is summer," or somebody was careless in the slum. That's why they're catching fire. These people will be resettled. So I think it's everywhere, isn't it? It's just going to be harder on activists, of course.
One is, just wanted to know, who do you think are your major literary influences, the Indian writers especially? Because I was in the premise of your book reminded me a bit of Rajarao's Kantapura, village rising and the story being told through an old woman's eyes and all that. And my second question is, why this choice of title? Why we call it Gypsy Goddess? Because from what I could sense, there's nothing godlike about the beginning of the story.
The Gypsy Goddess, why is the title? I think you have to read the book. And the first question of who is my literary influence? I think I'm influenced a lot by basically, I'm more like the Indian poets, like writing Kamala Das or the Bombay poets, and because I was growing up as a poet, writing a lot of poetry. But among the fiction writers, I would I love Arundhati Roy, of course, obvious choice. I love Salman Rushdie, I love Amitabh Ghosh, and I read a lot. So I'm not sure if I think influence is what's very subconscious, isn't it? It's not what's very clear and what you actually know. Okay, I'm going to write like Arundhati Roy. That wouldn't be an influence. That would be a grammar exercise or something. Writing exercise. So I don't know who my influences are, but I do read a lot of literature from India.
He's talking about this character Gopal Krishna Naidu. On a sultry afternoon in July, when the sun sets the sky on fire, Gopal Krishna Naidu's gleaming pleasure car, simply called pleasure by some villagers and car by those who have travelled in one, arrives at the doorsteps of Ramu Thevar's palatial bungalow, having traversed a picturesque Tanjore countryside replete with lakes and rivers and lush green rice fields and tropical coconut trees. In a cinematic wide-angle shot, the door of the ash-coloured ambassador opens, and we first spot Gopal Krishna Naidu's gold-ringed right hand, and then we see the rest of him emerge, dressed in a spotless, hand-spun, hassle-free white cotton. As you visualize him walking from his car to his designated place, here is the background song that should fill your eager ears. One in a million, he walks like a kingly lion, I think. One in a million, he wears red vermilion. One in a million, he's here to crush the rebellion. Trust me, such music sounds really upbeat when wrapped in jam. Then she goes on to, a little bit later, she's talking about the people in the room who are not doing their job as landlords. And she says, talks to one of the persons. People say that you have joined the communists. I hope it is only gossip. He singles out Ganapati Nadar. But who can stop these ignorant people from speaking whatever comes to their mind? And they have good reason to say what they are saying. Every village in Nagapatinam sports our association flag, doesn't it? Except the village of Kilvenmani, which has the fortune of being owned by you. and the misfortune of being covered in red flags. Forgive me, Comrade Ganpati, if your stomach churns at all this talk. But seriously, are you thinking of upstaging us? Shocked into standing, his body considerably stooped, Ganpati hastily professes his loyalty and his devotion. I have asked them to remove the red flags. Even yesterday I did. Many times before I did. Oh, you want me? You want us to believe you? All the red cloth in Nagapattinam flies in that village. But how would you have seen it? Both your wives are keeping you very busy. Then it goes a little further. Look, tell me the name of the troublemakers. We will take them one by one. Dead people do not speak or shout in public meetings. They are silent and well behaved, and they serve as good example to others. Let the communists know that we will never succumb to their blackmail tactics. They take their processions through our streets. They hold meetings in our grounds. The threat of violence is out in the open. It's in their songs, it's in their slogans. Should we let ourselves be terrorized in this manner? Is it not our duty to tell people about the true colors of the communists? Just because we have a few thigh-twitching, weak-kneed landlords in our midst does not mean that we will be bamboozled by these outcasts. It is not enough if we strike a deal with some of their leaders and sit back silently. It is our personal responsibility to make sure that none of us is held hostage by them. We will do whatever it takes, but we will not concede to the demands of these coolies or their leaders. Today you have all come running to me because they have asked for an extra half measure of rice. If you give it today, they will ask for 10 measures tomorrow. If you let them enter your home, they will want to sleep in your bed. Nothing we give them will be enough for them. So it is better that they are given nothing to begin with. Let them complain. Now he looks around the room at the nodding heads and calls them out as if it were an award function. Kerosene Govinda, Balakrishna, Ramanuja, Murthy, Kittu, murder case, Poraya, rape case, Ramu Devar, abduction and attempted murder. Can anybody even count the times he has been investigated? He was there in every movement, and now he is with the ruling party. He is in fact the biggest DMK politician in our area. He is a daring man. Cases cannot shake him. One has to learn from him that a complaint against you means you are doing very good work. A case against you means you are doing excellent work. That's a section which I thought showed the sharpness of her, very entertaining.
Everyone for coming. It's getting a little late, but please have your book signed. Maybe we'll do the book signing outside, Meena, if that's okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Alvarez, as well as Meena, for this lovely occasion. And thank you all for coming.